all this stuff about civility, how does that relate to the ways in which we exercise leadership, not only in the larger culture, where we have all kinds of challenges to civility? And I said a few things about those. And you folks can, I hope I can get some feedback on this because I'd like to learn from your conversations about this. But also, how do we exercise leadership within the Christian community? Suppose we also come away from this convinced that there is this whole question of spiritual formation for civility. How do we pitch that? How do we nurture people in our organizations, in our congregations, on our campuses, and just the people within the Christian community with whom we share a basic set of convictions, but often worry that they haven't cultivated the civility that is grounded in the kind of spiritual formation that we should be caring about. I think, obviously, from what I've already said, some of it has to do with a posture of self-critique. When I say don't put your best case against their worst case, that operates within the Christian community as well. And it's so important for me as a Calvinist to look at all the ways in which, when I'm arguing with a Mennonite about some doctrine or some ethical issue, to look at all the ways in which my ancestors were so cruel to their ancestors, and to enter into that with a spirit of humility. I once debated Myron Augsburger, a Mennonite leader, wonderful guy in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, Mount Joy Mennonite Church. I was going to be the only Calvinist there, and he and I were going to debate on an evening to a large crowd of Mennonites, just war versus pacifism. And we got together to prepare for that in the afternoon. And he made an amazing and, for me, life-changing proposal. He said, in the 16th century, Mennonites and Calvinists always argued together, and we were very nasty to each other. We pacifists, he said, can claim pacifism in our actions, but we're also kind of mean-spirited in what we say about other people. And he said, let's begin tonight where each of us say something about what we admire in the other person's perspective, in the other person's community. And that was a wonderful experience, to begin by, first of all, just saying how much we have learned from the other, how much we wish we could learn from the other, even though we weren't about to switch positions on this or anything like that. And I have found that kind of approach so necessary, and I think it's important for us in the life of the Christian community to cultivate that sense of self-critique, of search me, O Lord, and know my heart, try me, test me, and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. But another is, and I know this is a tough one, but it's a goal I think we ought to work for, and that is to cultivate a spirit of mystery about God's workings. I believe in hell. I believe in the reality of hell. I believe the worst thing in the world a person could do is to reject God's offer of salvation in Jesus Christ. But if somebody says to me, well, is that person going to go to hell? Or, my response is, I believe in the reality of hell. I'm not a universalist, but I live with a lot of mystery about how God gets a hold of people. And I live with a lot of mystery about what God is doing beyond the realm, beyond the boundaries of the Christian community. Several years ago at the National Prayer Breakfast, where Phyllis and I have gone every year since 1990, every year. And National Prayer Breakfast, many of you know, is not much prayer, not much breakfast, but they have some other good things associated with the prayer breakfast, including a luncheon where they have a speaker after the prayer breakfast. So there are usually 1,000 or 2,000 people there. And one year, one of the speakers was King Abdullah II of Jordan. And he gave a wonderful talk, calling for Muslims of goodwill to join with Christians and Jews of goodwill to counter the fundamentalisms and the violence of each of our communities, and that was just great. But afterwards, some of us had a chance to meet alone with him, and he was even better there, just private, pre-exchange. And he was getting ready to leave. His bodyguards came in to take him away, and we were there, Christians, Jews, and Muslims, about 25 of us. And just before he left, the bodyguards came in, and a rabbi from New York, an older rabbi, said, Your Majesty, just tell me you need 2 more minutes. I've got to say something. I've got to do something before you go. And I said, I so appreciate you. I so appreciate what you've said today. We need you. I worry about your safety. I'm going to pray for your safety and the safety of your family, that God will give you strength to keep saying the kinds of things that you've been saying. And before you go, he said, I just want to give a blessing on behalf of all the children of Abraham who are gathered here today. And he said, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you peace. And I said, as an evangelical Christian, as I looked at that scene where a son of Isaac gave a blessing to a son of Ishmael, I said in my heart, I believe with all my heart that my God, the God and Father of Jesus Christ, looked down on that and said, that's good. I don't understand it with all my theology. I'm still going to preach John 3:16 as many opportunities that I can. But I'm going to live with the mystery of saying that God looked down on a rabbi giving a blessing to a Muslim king. And that God looked at that and said, that's good. And I live with a lot of mystery about that. Thank God, Billy Graham also said not too long ago, I live with a lot of mystery about that. I preach Jesus, but I leave it up to God to decide. And that frees us up. And it frees the Christian community up from so many of the harshness, the phobias, the intolerance within our own life. Because if I can live with some mystery about what God is doing out there, I can live with some mystery about what God is doing in the life of each of our organizations. And it's so important for us to be exhibiting that kind of mystery-based leadership that cultivates the spirituality that is so necessary for convicted civility.